Hello folks, this is an ink dependence review of Franklin-Christoph's Old Emerald, or Olde Emerald if you want to sound fancy. I originally put this ink in an Esterbrook J with this little relief stub nib. It's kind of a medium stub, it's a fun nib, but you can see that I let it sit for a little while and the ink really kind of concentrated. It's got this really dark green cast to it. However, once you get it going again, if you don't let it just sit in your pen for a week or so, it's this really nice kind of old money look. When I think of the way that money looks, it looks like this kind of green. I'm getting a little shaky here. Alright, so very smooth in all of my pens. I just had a little bit of bleed on the worst papers that I have. Actually, that one is here. Let's see. This one right here. This is one of those little pads of paper that you get in a hotel room or something like that, and it does look a little bit pale on here, and it seems like it bleeds and feathers and spreads just a skosh, but it really doesn't feather all that much. I mean, you can see a few there on the top of the H and a couple other places, but not really that bad. It does kind of show through, but again, this is the weakest paper imaginable. It's super thin, and heck, you can almost see my hand. You can actually see my hands through it. It's just a step up from like Bible paper. So anyway, there you go. If you're using something better than Bible paper to write on, then go for it. All right, so I tried this out in several different pens. I'll show you those in just a few seconds here, but I wanted to go ahead and do the water test first. You can see the things I compared it to. I've got Noodler's Hunter Green, which is one of my very favorite greens. It's like a bright green, and it's bulletproof, and it flows really well, and everything. It's awesome. The Varsity Green's a little weak, some weak sauce. Verdura is very cool from the R&K. Soft Mint and Walt Whitman don't really look like a green, although Walt Whitman does look green sometimes. Alright, so there's my little splotch. Scrape it around. You can see a lot of variation. This ink is not particularly saturated, so you do get a lot of shading most of the time. So let's see if it's got any water resistance. I think it might have a little bit, although I'm not hoping for much. Greens are hard to make water resistant. So there it goes. You can see it getting pale and sort of coming off. Wipe it away. See what we've got left. No, not much. This is, of course, being done on some Rhodia paper, and so that's not going to let it soak in very much. We do still have a few lines left. Actually, let's turn this over and use it as a backdrop for this one and see what happens when I drop it on here. So, let's drop it. Let's drop it on the feathers. Why not? All right. This paper's crappy, so the water is. Oh, no, it's beating up. There we go. All right. So, wipe it away, and yeah, sure enough, not very much came off at all. You can see it bled a little extra. You can see that clearly, but yep, look at that. If you're using something that's slightly more absorbent than Rhodia, which is most things, your writing will still be legible afterwards. Well, as legible as it starts out with, I suppose. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the other pens I used it in. I actually really only used it in that Esterbrook in a Rotring core, which says it has an XS nib, which is this one right here, this second bit. Core nib looks like this. You haven't seen a core before. It's this pen, this weirdo knobbly top on it. I sort of like it, although nobody else does, I don't think. But it says XS. Really, it's kind of a sort of a medium fine. It's fairly fine, but not super fine. So here you go. You can see it in the Esterbrook, which is sort of a medium, but it's a stub, so it looks angular. And then, well, stub, maybe a little bit more italic. I don't know, something like that. It's certainly a bit flat. All right. You can see it kind of still looks green, and then you put it in the bold. This is a broad nib. I always say bold for the broad nibs, but man, they are bold. This one does put down quite a bit of ink, but it really lets you see the hue. As I say there, I'm not wrong. It's amazing that I agree with myself, right? But you still can see it's a really good sort of old money kind of color. So, for comparison, I put it in the broad stub nib that I have. This is one of my very favorite nibs. I love this thing. You can see the difference between the broad and the broad stub. When Mike from Mike at Work, Mike Masuyama, gets a hold of it, he can make a really nice stub. So check out those nibs. I also got several nibs from Franklin-Christoph for this one pen. I'm actually washing it right now, but the rest of it looks like this. It's the Collegia model. Focus in here. There we go. Which is kind of a big, heavy brass pen. I like it a lot. But I got several nibs, and I can sort of screw in and screw out the nib units on them to show different sorts of variation between nibs. So you can see the broad stub, you can see the broad, you can see the medium, and then down there at the very bottom is an extra fine. I've never got an extra fine nib before, and you can see the difference between that extra fine and this XS nib. They're both very fine, but the extra fine, man, still very fine. Now, this is a good nib. I've never had an extra fine before, like I said, but it does put down a fair amount of ink. It's not super dry. It's also not scratchy, which is kind of what I expected. It was dry and scratchy, but it looks good, so I might actually find myself using that. So anyway, there you go. That's Franklin-Christoph's Old Emerald. It does come in this bottle, just like the others. The other writing fluid, you can see their little like grass-looking design on the side, especially grassy in the Old Emerald. So there you go. Nice glass bottle. Good top. It's got the nice plastic insert on the top like I showed in the last one I did. I'm not going to try to unscrew this with one hand. With my left hand, I think it would go poorly. So, there you are. It's Franklin-Christoph's Old Emerald. Check it out. This is a really good ink from Franklin-Christoph.